Never go to the ranch. Vincent, promise me. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut when I found them in Sarah's final letter, written just days before the cancer took her. 2 years had passed since I lost my wife, and I thought I knew everything about the woman I'd been married to for 32 years. I was wrong. My name is Vincent Pierce. I'm 58 years old, and until last month, I thought I was just a retired construction engineer living quietly in Wisconsin, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. That was before Attorney Thompson called me into his office in downtown Milwaukee and handed me a brass key attached to a Colorado license plate keychain. Your wife purchased property in Colorado 3 years ago, Thompson said, sliding a thick envelope across his mahogany desk. According to her instructions, you were only to be informed after her passing, and only if you specifically asked about any undisclosed assets. I stared at the key, my mind reeling. Sarah had never mentioned Colorado. We'd talked about retirement plans, about maybe moving somewhere warmer, but Colorado, and she'd bought property there while fighting cancer and never told me. What kind of property? I managed to ask. A ranch. 600 acres outside Denver. She paid cash. Thompson adjusted his glasses. Mr. Pierce, there's something else. The property has become quite valuable recently. Rare earth mineral deposits were discovered in the area about 18 months ago. Your wife declined multiple offers from mining companies. The envelope contained the deed, transfer papers, and a sealed letter with my name written in Sarah's careful handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Vincent, if you're reading this, then I've left you too soon, and I'm sorry. There's so much I should have told you but couldn't bring myself to face. The ranch is yours now. I've spent the last 3 years transforming it from a broken place into something beautiful, something worthy of you. I know I made you promise never to go there. I'm releasing you from that promise. In fact, I'm asking you to go just once before you decide what to do with it. On the desk in the main house is a laptop. The password is the date we met, followed by my maiden name. I love you, Vince, more than you'll ever know, Sarah. I clutched the letter, feeling like I was meeting a stranger. Sarah had always been the practical one, the planner, the one who discussed every major decision with me. This secret property purchase while she was sick, it didn't fit the woman I thought I knew. There's one more thing, Thompson said, his voice lowering. Your wife's family has already contacted us. They're aware of the property's value and have expressed interest in its disposition. Sarah's family, her parents had died years ago and she was an only child. Then it hit me. You mean my family? My brother Leonard Thompson nodded grimly. He's retained counsel and filed preliminary paperwork questioning the validity of the property transfer, claiming it should be considered part of your joint marital assets subject to family inheritance rights. That was just like Leonard. My younger brother had always been a schemer, always looking for angles. After our parents died 5 years ago, he'd managed most of their estate settlement while I was focused on Sarah's cancer treatments. I'd trusted him to handle it fairly, but looking back, there had been discrepancies I'd never fully understood. The drive to Colorado gave me too much time to think. Sarah had been making extended medical trips to Denver for months during her treatment. I'd assumed they were for specialized oncology consultations at the University Medical Center. Now I realized she'd been building something in secret, creating a life I knew nothing about. My son Daniel called as I crossed the Wisconsin-Illinois border. Dad, you okay? Uncle Leonard called asking about some ranch mom supposedly bought. Said you were driving to Colorado without telling anyone. I pulled into a truck stop, needing to hear a friendly voice. Danny, there's a lot I don't understand yet. Your mom left me a property I didn't know existed. That doesn't sound like Mom. She told us everything, always overplanned everything. That's what I thought too. Want me to fly out? I can be in Denver by tonight. Daniel was 29, a good kid working as a junior associate at a law firm in Minneapolis. The last thing I wanted was to drag him into whatever mess Sarah had left behind. Let me figure out what's going on first. I'll call you tomorrow, Dad. If Uncle Leonard is involved, you need to be careful. Remember what happened with Grandma and Grandpa's estate. I did remember. Leonard had handled everything, said the final numbers were lower than expected due to medical bills and final expenses. At the time, dealing with Sarah's diagnosis, I'd been grateful someone else was managing the details. Maybe I'd been too trusting. The ranch appeared around a bend in the Colorado foothills like something from a magazine. Rolling pastures stretched toward snow-capped mountains dotted with horses grazing peacefully in the afternoon sun. The main house was a beautiful 2-story log structure with a wide wraparound porch and large windows that caught the late sunlight perfectly. Nothing about it suggested the secrecy Sarah had always maintained. A man in his 60s emerged from a workshop building as I pulled up to the house. He was weathered and lean, with calloused hands and the steady presence that comes from years of working with tools and machinery. Mr. Pierce? He approached with a cautious smile. I'm Noah Carter. Your wife hired me to manage the place. You knew Sarah, knew her for 3 years now. She was here every month, sometimes more, overseeing every detail personally. Never delegated a decision if she could make it herself. He gestured toward the house. She talked about you often, said you were the most capable man she'd ever known, but that some things were too complicated to explain until the right time. I followed Noah up the porch steps, my mind spinning with questions. How had Sarah afforded this place? How had she managed monthly trips to Colorado while I thought she was just going to medical appointments? The key turned smoothly in the front door, and I stepped into a beautifully appointed great room with exposed beams and a massive stone fireplace. But what made me stop and stare wasn't the architecture. It was the walls. Every available space was covered with photographs. Not random pictures, but carefully curated images of construction projects, engineering marvels, bridges, skyscrapers, dams, all the kinds of projects I'd dreamed of working on but never had the chance to tackle. My life's passion, the career ambitions I'd set aside to provide steady income for our family, surrounded me like a gallery dedicated to the dreams I thought Sarah had never fully understood. There were pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge during construction, the Hoover Dam project, modern sustainable buildings in Europe, innovative tension cable systems I'd only read about in journals. Each photograph was professionally mounted and labeled with technical specifications that showed deep understanding of the engineering principles involved. On a desk by the window overlooking the pastures sat a silver laptop with a single red rose laid across its closed lid. She spent hours in this room, Noah said quietly behind me. Always said she was learning about your world, trying to understand what made you passionate about building things. I moved closer to examine the photographs, recognizing several as projects I'd mentioned over dinner conversations, structures I'd pointed out during our travels, innovations I'd discussed with the enthusiasm only another engineer could truly appreciate. Or so I'd thought. How long did you say you'd known Sarah? 3 years, since she first came to look at the property. It was in rough shape then, old ranch house falling apart, fences down, pastures overgrown, but she had a vision for it. Noah led me through the house, each room revealing more of Sarah's secret planning. The kitchen was equipped with professional-grade appliances and a breakfast nook positioned to catch the morning sun over the eastern pastures. The master bedroom featured a reading corner with built-in shelves holding books on engineering, construction management, and sustainable building practices, subjects Sarah had never shown interest in during our marriage. She was educating herself, I said, more to myself than to Noah. That's what it looked like. Always asking questions about the construction work, wanting to understand why we made certain choices. Smart woman, your wife, picked up technical concepts faster than most contractors I've worked with. The tour continued through what Sarah had clearly intended as a workshop area, a large space with concrete floors, electrical outlets positioned for heavy equipment, and natural lighting optimized for detailed work. Plans and blueprints covered a drafting table, showing designs for additional buildings on the property. What are these? I asked, studying the architectural drawings. Geest houses, she called them. Said they were for visiting engineers and students. Something about creating a place where people could test innovative building techniques. My throat tightened. Sarah had been planning an engineering retreat center, a place where the theoretical concepts I'd spent decades studying could be put into practical application. It was a dream I'd mentioned once, maybe twice years ago during late-night conversations about what I'd do if money wasn't an object. Before I could process what I was seeing, the sound of vehicles on gravel announced other arrivals. Through the workshop window, I watched 2 black SUVs pull up behind my rental truck. 3 men emerged from the first vehicle, all bearing the unmistakable Pierce features that I saw in my own mirror every morning. Leonard, my brother, led the group, followed by his twin sons Adrian and Simon, both 30 years old and successful in their respective careers. Adrian was a lawyer in Denver. Simon worked in finance. Both had inherited their father's sharp business instincts and competitive nature. The second SUV disgorged 2 men in expensive suits who radiated corporate authority. Mr. Pierce, Noah said quietly, appearing at my elbow. Your wife warned me this might happen. She left specific instructions about how to handle family visitors. What kind of instructions to record everything? She said family members might try to claim things that didn't belong to them. Leonard approached the house with the confident stride of a man who believed he belonged there. At 54, he'd maintained the athletic build and commanding presence that had served him well as an investment banker in Denver. His success had always been a source of subtle competition between us, though I'd never felt threatened by it until now. The knock came firm and authoritative. I opened the door to face my brother for the first time since Sarah's funeral. Vince, Leonard nodded, his smile not reaching his eyes. We need to talk about what? About this ranch that Sarah somehow acquired without your knowledge or involvement. He gestured to the men behind him. This is Maxwell Reed from Rocky Mountain Mining, and these are my sons Adrian and Simon. We're here to discuss the property's future. I noticed he didn't ask to be invited in, simply walked past me into the great room. The others followed, taking in the impressive space with calculating expressions. Nice place, Adrian commented, his lawyer's eye clearly assessing value. Must have cost Sarah considerable resources to acquire and develop. Resources that came from the Pierce family estate, Leonard added, settling into a leather armchair without invitation. Resources that should have been discussed with family before being committed to speculative real estate investments. The audacity was breathtaking, but I kept my expression neutral. Sarah's consulting business was quite successful. She had her own money. Maxwell Reed stepped forward, briefcase in hand. Mr. Pierce, I represent Rocky Mountain Mining. We're prepared to offer $4 million for the mineral rights to this property. It's a generous offer that would benefit everyone involved. $4 million. Even at the reduced amount, the number represented more money than I'd ever imagined having access to. I thought about my modest retirement savings, the small Wisconsin house Sarah and I had paid off over 30 years, the careful budgeting we'd maintained throughout our marriage. The offer assumes, of course, that there are no complications regarding ownership, Simon added smoothly. We understand there may be questions about how the property was acquired and whether all family members were properly consulted. I looked around the room at these men, my brother and nephews, along with a mining executive, all clearly expecting me to be overwhelmed by their coordinated approach. They'd planned this ambush carefully, arriving together to present a united front of family pressure and financial temptation. Before we discuss anything, I said, moving to the laptop on the desk, I'd like to understand what Sarah intended. I opened the computer and entered the password, 051575 Mitchell. The screen came to life immediately, opening to a folder labeled for Vincent. Inside were dozens of video files, each dated starting from the day after her funeral and extending months into the future. I clicked the first one. Sarah's face filled the screen, not the pale, exhausted version from her final months, but healthy and vibrant, clearly recorded some time ago. She smiled at the camera with that slight grin that had always made my heart skip. "Hello, sweetheart," she began. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone and you've come to the ranch despite my years of making you promise not to. I should have known you wouldn't be able to resist, especially after Thompson told you about it." A lump formed in my throat. Even now, she knew me so well. "I've made a video for every week of your first year without me," she continued. "1 year of me keeping you company while you grieve. And 1 year of explaining everything I should have told you while I was alive." Leonard shifted impatiently behind me, but I ignored him. "Starting with why I bought the ranch I swore I'd never let you see," Sarah said, her expression growing serious. 3 years ago, when I was first diagnosed, I decided to use whatever time I had left to create something meaningful for you. You always talked about building something lasting, something that would showcase the engineering skills you never got to fully use, because you chose steady work to support our family. She leaned closer to the camera. "What Leonard doesn't know is that I legally purchased this ranch with money I'd been saving for 20 years from my consulting work. The account you never knew about because I wanted to surprise you for our retirement." My head snapped around to look at Leonard, whose confident expression had faltered slightly. Sarah continued on screen. "When I got sick, I liquidated everything and bought this place. Not just as a ranch, but as a development project where you could finally build the kind of structures you always dreamed about. The workshop building, the guest houses we planned, the demonstration areas, all designed with your specifications in mind." She paused, her eyes growing sad. "But Leonard will come for it. He's been pressuring me about family finances for years, ever since Mom and Dad died. What he doesn't know is that I documented everything." The video ended, freezing on Sarah's determined face. "Touching," Leonard said dryly, "but this doesn't change the legal realities. Family assets should be managed for the benefit of all family members, especially when they're worth $4 million, Adrian added smoothly. I closed the laptop, a strange calm settling over me. Sarah had known this would happen. She'd prepared for it. "The property belongs to me," I said simply. "Sarah left it to me legally and clearly. If you want to contest that, you're welcome to do so through the courts." Maxwell Reed stepped forward. "Mr. Pierce, perhaps we could discuss this more privately. Without family complications, there are no complications," I replied. "The answer is no. The ranch is not for sale." Leonard's mask of civility slipped slightly. "Vincent, you're being unreasonable. This property represents a significant windfall that could benefit the entire family. Your son Daniel, my boys, everyone could benefit from the sensible management of these assets." "You mean your management?" "I have experience with large financial transactions. You're a construction engineer, not a real estate developer or mining negotiator." Simon leaned forward. "Uncle Vincent, we're not trying to take anything away from you. We're offering to help maximize the value for everyone involved." "How generous," I said. But I noticed no one asked what Sarah's actual plans for this place were. The plans of someone who was clearly not thinking rationally in her final years, Leonard replied dismissively. Cancer patients aren't known for making sound financial decisions. Something cold and hard crystallized in my chest. Leonard had just dismissed my wife's carefully planned legacy as the irrational ramblings of a sick woman. I think you should leave, I said quietly. We're not leaving until we've had a proper discussion, Leonard insisted, rising from his chair. This property is too valuable for emotional decision-making. Mr. Pierce, Maxwell Reed interrupted, clearly uncomfortable with the family tension. Why don't I leave my card? You can contact me when you've had time to consider our offer. He set a business card on the coffee table and headed for the door, followed by his associate. Smart man recognizing a family fight when he saw one. Adrian and Simon exchanged glances, clearly torn between loyalty to their father and respect for their uncle who'd always treated them fairly. Dad, Adrian said carefully. Maybe we should give Uncle Vincent some time to process everything. Time for what? To make more emotional decisions? Leonard's business mask had completely dropped now, revealing the calculating personality beneath. Vincent, you've never been good at financial planning. Remember when you passed up that promotion to senior project manager because you didn't want the travel commitment? Sarah told me about that. Said you always chose security over opportunity. Sarah said that. She was worried about your retirement, about whether you'd saved enough. We discussed it several times over the years. I felt like I'd been punched. Sarah had been discussing our finances with Leonard without telling me. Expressing concerns about my career choices, she asked me to keep an eye on your situation after she was gone. Leonard continued, pressing his advantage, to make sure you didn't make any impractical decisions out of grief. Noah appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grim. Mr. Pierce, there's something I think you should see. Something Mrs. Pierce left in the workshop. Leonard frowned at the interruption. We're in the middle of a family discussion. Actually, I said, grateful for the diversion from Leonard's psychological assault. I'd like to see what Noah's talking about. This conversation can wait. Vincent, we're not finished here. Yes, we are, for now. As we walked toward the workshop, I could feel Leonard's eyes boring into my back. His words about Sarah discussing our finances behind my back had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. Had my wife really been worried about my practical decision-making? Had she seen me as someone who needed financial guidance from my younger brother? The workshop was larger than it had appeared from the outside, with high ceilings and concrete floors designed to handle heavy equipment. Toll benches lined the walls and several pieces of machinery sat under protective covers. But Noah led me to a corner where a large safe stood partially concealed behind a workbench. She gave me the combination last time she was here, Noah said, spinning the dial. Said if anything happened to her and family members started asking questions, I should show you this. The safe opened to reveal stacks of documents, USB drives, and several bound folders. Noah pulled out the top folder and handed it to me. Financial records, he said simply. Mrs. Pierce was very thorough. I opened the folder and immediately understood why Sarah had hidden it. Bank statements showed systematic transfers over 20 years from her consulting income into a separate account I'd never known existed. The amounts weren't large individually, $500 here, $1,000 there, but they added up to substantial savings over 2 decades. She was building a nest egg, I said, scanning the records. More than that, look at the dates. I studied the pattern more carefully. The transfers had accelerated dramatically in the final 3 years, corresponding with larger consulting contracts Sarah had taken on during her cancer treatment. She'd been working harder while sick, saving aggressively for something specific. She was funding this place while fighting cancer. Every month, sometimes she'd drive down here between chemo sessions to check on construction progress. Noah's voice grew quiet. Toughest woman I ever met. I flipped to the next section and found something that made my blood run cold. Detailed financial records for Leonard's investment firm, including client statements, trading records, and what appeared to be internal accounting documents. Where did she get these? Said she had friends in the financial industry, people who were concerned about certain irregularities. The documents painted a disturbing picture. Leonard's firm had been struggling for years, covering operational losses with increasingly risky investments. Several client accounts showed questionable transactions, and there were discrepancies between reported returns and actual performance. But it was the final section that hit me like a physical blow. Our parents' estate records, including the original probate filing and what appeared to be the actual asset valuations versus what Leonard had reported to me. $200,000, I whispered, staring at the numbers. What's that? The difference between what our parents' estate was actually worth and what Leonard told me it was worth. He skimmed $200,000. Noah grimly nodded. Your wife figured that's what he'd do when he came after this place. Use the same tactics he'd used before. My hands shook as I processed the implications. While I'd been focused on Sarah's cancer treatments, trusting Leonard to handle our parents' affairs fairly, he'd been systematically stealing from the estate. My share should have been $100,000 more than what I'd received. The workshop door opened behind us. Leonard stood silhouetted in the doorway, with Adrian and Simon flanking him. "What are you looking at there, Vincent?" I closed the folder carefully, my mind racing. Sarah had known about Leonard's embezzlement and had documented everything, but why hadn't she told me while she was alive? "Just some of Sarah's old business records," I said casually. Leonard stepped closer, his expression suspicious. "Anything relevant to the ranch ownership?"
Nothing that would interest you, Vincent. I hope you're not getting any ideas about fighting this.
The legal costs alone would eat up any potential profit from selling the mineral rights. Adrian shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, maybe we should let Uncle Vincent have some time to think things over." Time for what? To hire lawyers and create unnecessary complications? Leonard's mask of reasonableness was slipping again. "This is a simple business decision. Sell the mineral rights, divide the proceeds fairly among family members, and everyone benefits, defined fairly," I said, still holding the folder. Given that the funds used to purchase the property came from family resources, I think a 60-40 split would be appropriate. 60% for you, 40% from my side of the family. The audacity was breathtaking. He was proposing to take 40% of something he had no legal claim to, while simultaneously hiding the fact that he'd already stolen from our family. "That seems generous," I said carefully, "considering you have no ownership stake whatsoever. Family obligations run deeper than legal technicalities, Vincent. You know that?" Simon spoke up for the first time since arriving. "Uncle Vincent, we're not trying to take advantage. We just want to make sure everyone's interests are protected." I looked at my nephew, seeing genuine concern in his expression. Unlike his father and brother, Simon seemed uncomfortable with the aggressive tactics being employed. "Simon, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "In your experience with financial planning, would it be normal for someone to accumulate significant savings over 20 years without their spouse's knowledge?" He frowned, considering. "Well, it's not unheard of. Some people like to maintain separate accounts for surprises or emergency funds. But for amounts this large," he glanced at his father, "it would typically involve some unusual circumstances." Leonard's expression darkened. "What's your point, Vincent?" "Just trying to understand how Sarah managed to save enough money to buy this place. You seemed to suggest earlier that she couldn't have done it without using family money. She couldn't have. Not on her consulting income." I opened the folder and pulled out Sarah's bank statements. These records show otherwise 20 years of systematic savings from her business income. Every deposit documented and accounted for. Leonard reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. "Interesting reading," I continued, "especially the parts about certain irregularities in investment firm accounting practices." The temperature in the workshop seemed to drop 10 degrees. Leonard went very still, his eyes locked on the folder in my hands. "What exactly are you implying, Vincent?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." Sarah was very thorough in her research. Adrian stepped forward. "What kind of research?" Before I could answer Adrian's question, my phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the caller ID. "I need to take this," I said, stepping away from the group. "Dad, where are you?" Uncle Leonard called me again, said there's some kind of family emergency about Mom's finances. "Danny, I'm at the ranch." "There's no emergency, just some complications I'm working through." He said Mom might have made some questionable decisions while she was sick, that the family needs to step in to protect everyone's interests. I felt my jaw clench. Leonard was already working on Daniel, trying to turn my own son against Sarah's memory. "Son, your mother was completely sound of mind when she made her decisions about this property. Don't let your uncle convince you otherwise." "But Dad," he showed me some numbers, said the ranch cost way more than Mom could have afforded on her consulting income. He's worried she might have used some of Grandpa and Grandma's estate money inappropriately. The manipulation was masterful. Leonard was painting Sarah as the financial criminal while positioning himself as the concerned family member trying to protect everyone from her poor judgment. "Daniel, I need you to listen to me carefully. Your uncle is not telling you the truth about your grandmother and grandfather's estate or about your mother's finances." "What do you mean?" I looked back at Leonard, who was watching me intently while pretending to examine the workshop equipment. "I can't explain everything over the phone, but I need you to promise me something. Don't sign any documents or agree to anything Leonard suggests until we talk face to face." He mentioned something about a family meeting tomorrow, said we need to make some decisions about the ranch before things get more complicated. A family meeting where? Denver, at Adrian's law office. He said it would be more professional than trying to handle things informally, of course. Leonard wanted to get everyone to Denver, on his home turf where he could control the environment and apply maximum pressure. Probably had his own lawyers standing by to draft whatever agreements would serve his purposes. "Dad, should I go?" Uncle Leonard made it sound like you might not be thinking clearly about this situation. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, son. But yes, come to Denver. We need to have this meeting. Just remember what I said about not signing anything. After ending the call, I found Leonard studying Sarah's architectural plans with obvious interest. Ambitious project your wife had planned, he said casually. Geest houses, workshop expansions, some kind of educational facility. Must have cost a fortune to design all this. She was always a planner, indeed. Adrian tells me Daniel will be joining us tomorrow for our family discussion. Good. Young people often see situations more clearly than those of us who might be clouded by emotional attachments. The implication was clear. Leonard intended to use Daniel as leverage, convincing my son that his grief-stricken father was making irrational decisions that would hurt the family financially. About that meeting, I said, I'd prefer to have it here at the ranch rather than in Denver. Nonsense. Adrian's office has proper conference facilities, legal resources if we need them, much more professional for what? This is a family conversation, not a business negotiation. Simon looked uncomfortable. Dad, maybe Uncle Vincent has a point. If it's just family talking, location shouldn't matter. Leonard's expression hardened slightly. The location is settled. Adrian has already arranged for the conference room and prepared preliminary documentation for review. What kind of documentation? Partnership agreements, mineral rights, transfer papers, basic legal frameworks for managing the property as a family asset. Nothing complicated, just sensible structures to protect everyone's interests. So Leonard had already prepared the legal paperwork to seize control of Sarah's ranch. He was so confident in his ability to manipulate the situation that he drafted the documents before even confirming my cooperation. I appreciate the preparation, I said carefully, but I haven't agreed to any partnerships or transfers. Vincent, you're being impractical. This property is too valuable and too complex for individual management. Family participation ensures better decision-making and broader expertise. Noah had been listening quietly from the corner of the workshop. Now he stepped forward. Mr. Pierce, if you're planning a family meeting, there's something else your wife left that might be relevant. Something she specifically said to share only if there were disputes about the property. Leonard's attention snapped to Noah. What kind of something? A video recording. Made just before she died, about her intentions for the ranch and her concerns about certain family members. I felt a chill of anticipation. Sarah had prepared for this scenario too. I think we should all see that recording, I said. Now, Adrian asked. Tomorrow, at the family meeting. Since Leonard has gone to the trouble of arranging a professional setting for our discussion, we should make sure all relevant information is presented. Leonard's confident facade cracked slightly. What exactly did Sarah say in this recording? You'll find out tomorrow, Noah replied, along with everyone else. The workshop fell silent except for the distant sound of horses in the pastures. Leonard was clearly trying to calculate this new variable, wondering what Sarah might have revealed about his activities. Fine, he said finally. We'll review whatever recording exists, but I want my lawyer present for any formal discussions, of course, and I'll arrange for my own legal representation. You're overcomplicating this, Vincent. We're family. We should be able to resolve this without lawyers and formal proceedings. Family should be able to trust each other too, I said quietly. But here we are. Adrian checked his watch. It's getting late. Dad, maybe we should head back to Denver and let Uncle Vincent get settled in for the night. Yes, Leonard agreed, but his eyes remained fixed on me. Vincent, I hope you'll think carefully about this situation overnight. Consider what's best for everyone involved. I'll think about everything very carefully. As they prepared to leave, Simon approached me privately. Uncle Vincent, can I ask you something? Sure. Is Dad in some kind of trouble? He's been acting strange lately, more aggressive about business matters. And some of the things you said about accounting irregularities? I studied my nephew's face, seeing genuine concern rather than Leonard's calculating opportunism. Simon, your father may have made some poor decisions over the years, decisions that are now creating complications. What kind of decisions? Come to the meeting tomorrow. Bring an open mind and your own judgment. Don't let anyone else tell you what to think. That evening, after Leonard and his sons had driven back to Denver, I sat alone in Sarah's great room trying to process everything I'd learned. The ranch felt different now, less like a mysterious gift, and more like a carefully constructed fortress Sarah had built to protect me from something she'd seen coming. I opened the laptop again and found the second video file, dated for the day after the first. Sarah appeared on screen in what I now recognized as the ranch office, surrounded by the same financial documents Noah had shown me in the workshop. Hello again, sweetheart, she began, her expression more serious than in the first video. If you're watching this, then Leonard has already made his move. And if I know my brother-in-law, he's brought the boys along to add family pressure. She leaned forward, her hands clasped together. Vincent, there's something I need to tell you about Leonard that I should have shared years ago. Something I discovered quite by accident when I was researching financial advisors during my diagnosis. Sarah held up a thick folder. I wanted to understand our retirement planning options, so I started looking into Leonard's firm. What I found concerned me enough to hire a private investigator. My blood ran cold. Sarah had investigated Leonard professionally. Your brother has been struggling financially for years. His investment strategies have been increasingly risky, and several of his larger clients have suffered significant losses. But instead of adjusting his approach, he's been covering losses with new client money. She paused, letting that sink in. It's a classic Ponzi structure, Vincent. He's been robbing Peter to pay Paul, hoping that one big win would let him break even before anyone noticed. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Leonard wasn't just careless with money, he was running a criminal enterprise. When our parents died, I watched him handle the estate. I noticed discrepancies in the final accounting, amounts that didn't match the original asset valuations. So I had my investigator dig deeper. Sarah's expression grew sad. Leonard stole from our parents' estate. Vincent, $200,000 that should have been split between you two. He used it to cover operational losses at his firm. I paused the video, my hands shaking with anger, not just at the theft, but at my own naivety. While I'd been focused on Sarah's cancer treatments, trusting Leonard to handle family business fairly, he'd been systematically robbing us. When I resumed the video, Sarah's expression had hardened with determination. I didn't tell you while I was alive because I knew it would destroy you. You loved Leonard despite his flaws, and discovering his betrayal while I was fighting cancer would have been too much to bear. She was right. If I'd known about the embezzlement while Sarah was sick, it would have devastated me at a time when I needed all my emotional strength focused on her care. But he'll come for the ranch, Vincent. Once he learns about the mineral rights value, he'll try to convince you that family obligations require sharing the wealth. He'll use guilt, manipulation, even legal pressure if necessary. Sarah stood up and moved to a filing cabinet, withdrawing several documents, so I've prepared a few surprises for him. First, I've documented everything. Every fraudulent transaction, every client account he's mismanaged, every piece of evidence that proves his criminal activity. My lawyer has copies and instructions to turn them over to federal authorities if Leonard tries to claim any rights to this property. My wife had been planning a war, not just defending against attack, but preparing to destroy Leonard completely if he threatened our future. Second, I've been in contact with several of his former clients who suspect they've been defrauded. They're prepared to file formal complaints if given proper documentation of Leonard's activities. The video continued with Sarah outlining an elaborate defense strategy. She'd anticipated Leonard's tactics, prepared countermoves, even arranged for legal representation specializing in financial fraud cases. And third, she said with a slight smile, I've set up a trust structure that makes it legally impossible for Leonard to claim any interest in the ranch, regardless of what arguments he presents about family obligations or marital asset classification. I paused the video again, overwhelmed by the depth of Sarah's preparation. While I'd been seeing her as my practical, supportive wife, she'd been operating as a strategic mastermind, protecting me from threats I hadn't even recognized existed. My phone buzzed with a text message from Daniel, flying to Denver tomorrow morning. Uncle Leonard booked me a room at the same hotel where he's staying. Says we need to coordinate our approach before the meeting. Leonard was still working on Daniel, trying to get my son aligned with his position before the confrontation. I texted back, stay at a different hotel. Don't discuss anything with Leonard until we've talked. Dad, why? He's trying to help protect the family's interests. I stared at that text for a long moment, seeing how effectively Leonard had already begun manipulating Daniel's perception. My son genuinely believed his uncle was trying to protect us from my poor judgment, because I don't trust his definition of family interests. Trust me on this, please. Okay, but this is getting weird. Why is everyone being so secretive about everything? Good question. From Daniel's perspective, the adults in his family were suddenly acting paranoid and accusatory about what should have been a straightforward property inheritance. Leonard had positioned himself as the voice of reason, trying to help an emotionally compromised brother make sound financial decisions. I called Daniel directly. Dad, what's really going on, Danny? Your Uncle Leonard has been lying to our family for years, stealing from us actually. Your mother discovered it before she died, and that's why she structured the ranch inheritance the way she did, stealing. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. Leonard embezzled $200,000 from your grandparents' estate, money that should have come to me. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Do you have proof? Your mother documented everything. I'll show you tomorrow. Dad, I have to ask this, but are you sure you're thinking clearly? Grief can make people paranoid. See conspiracies where none exist. Leonard's psychological warfare was working. He'd planted enough doubt about my emotional state that even my own son was questioning my judgment. Son, I know how this sounds, but I need you to keep an open mind tomorrow. Look at the evidence objectively and make your own conclusions. Okay, but Dad, promise me you won't do anything rash. Uncle Leonard says this property could set our whole family up financially if it's handled properly. And what does he define as handled properly? Selling the mineral rights and dividing the proceeds among family members. He says it's what Grandpa and Grandma would have wanted, taking care of everyone equally. The irony was sickening. Leonard was invoking our dead parents' wishes to justify stealing from their estate, and now trying to steal from their daughter-in-law's legacy. The man had no shame. Daniel, our grandparents worked their whole lives to leave something for their children. Leonard has already stolen half of what they intended for me. Now he wants to steal from your mother's estate too. I just can't believe Uncle Leonard would do something like that. He's always been successful, always seemed so financially responsible. That was Leonard's greatest con, the appearance of success. His expensive suits, confident demeanor, and impressive office had convinced everyone, including me, that he was thriving professionally. In reality, he'd been desperately juggling failing investments and client losses for years. Son, appearances can be deceiving. Your mother spent months investigating Leonard's business practices. What she found will shock you. After ending the call, I returned to Sarah's laptop and found a third video file. This one was labeled for the family meeting. Sarah appeared on screen wearing a formal business suit, seated behind what looked like a lawyer's desk. Her expression was stern, almost judicial. If this video is being played, then Leonard has forced a family confrontation over the ranch property. Vincent, I'm sorry you have to deal with this, but I knew it was inevitable once he learned about the mineral rights. She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. Leonard, since you're undoubtedly watching this, let me be perfectly clear. I know about your embezzlement of your parents' estate. I know about your fraudulent investment practices, and I know about the $200,000 you stole from Vincent while he was caring for me during my cancer treatment. My heart pounded as I realized the devastating impact this video would have. Sarah was speaking directly to Leonard, calling out his crimes in front of his own sons. I have documentation of every illegal transaction, every client account you've mismanaged, every federal securities violation you've committed. My attorney has instructions to forward this evidence to the FBI and SEC if you make any attempt to claim rights to this property. Sarah stood up and moved to a wall chart that showed Leonard's financial crimes in detail. Account numbers, dates, amounts, a prosecutor's dream case laid out with engineering precision. Adrian and Simon, you need to understand what your father has done. He's been running a Ponzi scheme for 3 years, using new client money to cover losses from failed investments. When the scheme collapses, and it will, you'll both face potential liability as officers of the firm. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. Adrian and Simon weren't just Leonard's sons, they were employees and officers of his investment company. If Leonard's criminal activity came to light, they could face federal charges as co-conspirators. But I'm prepared to offer Leonard a way out, Sarah continued. Full restitution of the stolen estate money, immediate cessation of all claims against the ranch, and a complete restructuring of his business practices under federal oversight. In exchange, I won't pursue criminal charges. Sarah had prepared a plea bargain, offering Leonard a chance to avoid prison in exchange for making things right, but only if he abandoned his attempts to steal the ranch. Leonard, you have 24 hours from the time this video is played to accept these terms. After that, the evidence goes to federal authorities regardless of your cooperation. The video ended with Sarah's steely gaze fixed on the camera, looking like a prosecutor delivering an ultimatum to a criminal defendant. I sat in stunned silence, realizing the full scope of what Sarah had prepared. This wasn't just about protecting the ranch. She'd built a case that could destroy Leonard completely if he didn't back down. My phone rang. Leonard's name appeared on the caller ID, Vincent. We need to talk tonight. Just the two of us. His voice sounded different, strained, almost desperate. Had he somehow learned about Sarah's videos? I thought we were meeting tomorrow with everyone. This can't wait. There are things I need to explain privately before the family meeting. What kind of things? Just meet me at the ranch. I'm driving out tonight. The line went dead. Leonard was coming back alone, which meant he wanted to negotiate without witnesses, probably hoping to convince me to suppress whatever evidence Sarah had left behind. I called Noah immediately. Leonard's coming back tonight. Alone, can you be here? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Should I bring anything special? Just yourself. And maybe that recording equipment Sarah mentioned while waiting for Noah. I explored more of Sarah's laptop files. She'd been incredibly thorough, documenting not just Leonard's crimes, but also creating a detailed plan for rebuilding his investment firm under ethical management if he chose cooperation over confrontation. It was classic Sarah, always looking for solutions that protected everyone while ensuring justice was served. She'd given Leonard a path to redemption, but only if he accepted full responsibility for his actions. Noah arrived just as Leonard's headlights appeared on the ranch road. He's early, Noah observed. Must be anxious about something. Sarah's final video reveals everything. Leonard's looking at federal prison if he doesn't cooperate. Then this should be an interesting conversation. Leonard knocked on the door with less confidence than he'd shown that afternoon. When I opened it, he looked older, worn down by whatever internal struggle he'd been fighting during the drive from Denver. Vincent, we need to discuss the situation privately. Man to man, Noah stays. He's the ranch manager and Sarah's appointed representative for property matters. Leonard glanced at Noah with obvious annoyance but didn't argue. We settled in the great room, but the dynamic had completely changed from our earlier confrontation. Vincent, I think there may have been some misunderstandings this afternoon about my intentions regarding the ranch. What kind of misunderstandings? I may have come across as more aggressive than I intended. The truth is, I'm concerned about your financial security, and I thought family involvement in managing this asset would be beneficial. The conciliatory tone was completely different from his earlier demands. Something had spooked him badly, and now, I think perhaps you should maintain full control of the property. Make your own decisions about the mineral rights. I studied my brother's face, seeing fear beneath the diplomatic language. What changed your mind? Leonard was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. Vincent, there are some complications with my business that I haven't mentioned. Issues that could affect my ability to participate in family investment decisions. What kind of complications? Leonard's hands trembled slightly as he reached into his briefcase and withdrew a folder of documents. The confident businessman from earlier had been replaced by a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Vincent, I need to be completely honest with you about my financial situation. There have been some irregularities in my firm's operations. What kind of irregularities? He opened the folder, revealing what appeared to be client statements and regulatory notices. Some investment strategies haven't performed as projected. Client losses have been more significant than anticipated. It was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak, describing criminal fraud as disappointing investment performance. How significant? Substantial enough that federal regulators have begun asking questions. Noah leaned forward from his chair near the fireplace. What kind of questions? Leonard glanced at Noah with irritation. This is a private family matter. Not anymore, I said firmly. Sarah left specific instructions that Noah should be present for any discussions about the ranch. If you want to talk, he stays. Fine. Leonard turned back to me with desperate eyes. Vincent, I need your help. If certain information becomes public, it could destroy not just me, but Adrian and Simon too. What information? Evidence that your wife apparently collected about my business practices. Evidence that could be misinterpreted by federal prosecutors looking to make an example of someone. The careful phrasing revealed everything. Leonard knew exactly what Sarah had discovered, and he was terrified of the consequences. Misinterpreted how financial regulations are complex. Sometimes legitimate business practices can appear questionable to investigators who don't understand the industry. I almost laughed at the audacity. Leonard was describing embezzlement and securities fraud as misunderstood business practices. And you think I can help how? By ensuring that any evidence Sarah collected remains private, family matters should be handled within the family, not dragged through federal courts. There it was. Leonard had driven 3 hours from Denver in the middle of the night to beg me to suppress evidence of his crimes. What about our parents' estate? The $200,000 discrepancy Sarah documented? Leonard's face went ashen. She told you about that. She documented everything, Leonard. Every dollar you stole while I was taking care of my dying wife. It wasn't theft. The mask slipped completely now, revealing the desperate criminal beneath. It was a temporary loan. I was planning to pay it back with interest once my investments recovered. With what money? According to Sarah's research, your firm has been losing money for 3 years. Leonard slumped in his chair, looking older than his 54 years. Vincent, you don't understand the pressure I've been under. Clients demanding impossible returns, competitors using insider information, regulatory changes that destroyed my best strategies. So you decided to steal from your own family? I decided to use available resources to keep the firm operational until conditions improved. Noah spoke up quietly. Mr. Leonard, how much money are we talking about total? Leonard shot him a poisonous look. That's confidential business information. Nothing's confidential anymore, I said. Sarah's documentation includes client statements, regulatory filings, bank records. She knew exactly how much you'd stolen from everyone. How could she possibly have access to that information? Sarah was a business consultant for 20 years, Leonard. She had contacts throughout the financial industry. When she decided to investigate you, she knew exactly who to ask and what to look for. The revelation seemed to crush Leonard's remaining hope. He'd underestimated Sarah completely, seeing her as just a supportive wife rather than the sharp businesswoman she'd always been. "What do you want from me?" he asked finally. "Full restitution. Every dollar you stole from our parents' estate plus interest, and a complete withdrawal of any claims against Sarah's ranch." "That's impossible. I don't have that kind of liquid capital." "Then liquidate some assets, sell your house, cash out your retirement accounts, whatever it takes." Leonard's desperation transformed into anger. "You're destroying my family to protect money you never even knew existed. Sarah bought that ranch without telling you, using funds she kept secret for 20 years. How is that different from what I did?" The false equivalence was breathtaking. "Sarah earned her money legally and saved it for our retirement. You stole money from dead parents and defrauded your own clients. I made mistakes. Bad investment decisions, that's not the same as criminal activity. According to federal securities law, it's exactly the same thing," Noah said quietly. Leonard turned on him furiously. "Who asked you?" "This is between family members." "Actually," I said, standing up, "Noah has something you need to see." "Something Sarah left specifically for this conversation." Leonard's face went white. "What do you mean?" I nodded to Noah, who retrieved a tablet from his jacket and set it on the coffee table. "Your wife made this recording specifically for tonight," Noah explained. "She anticipated that Leonard would try to negotiate privately before the family meeting." "I don't want to see any more of Sarah's recordings," Leonard said desperately. "You don't have a choice," I replied, pressing play. Sarah's image appeared on the tablet screen, but this time she was seated in what looked like a formal deposition room, with legal documents spread before her. "Leonard," she began, looking directly into the camera, "if you're watching this, then you've come to the ranch to try to convince Vincent to suppress evidence of your crimes. Let me save you some time. That's not going to happen." Leonard stared at the screen with the expression of a condemned man watching his execution. "I know you're hoping to frame this as a family dispute that should be resolved privately. But federal crimes aren't family matters, Leonard. They're public matters that require public accountability." Sarah held up a thick folder. "This contains documentation of your embezzlement, securities fraud, and client account mismanagement. Tomorrow morning, whether Vincent agrees to suppress this evidence or not, copies will be delivered to the FBI, SEC, and Colorado State Attorney General." Leonard's hands began shaking uncontrollably. "She can't do that. She's dead. My attorney has explicit instructions." Sarah continued on screen. "The only way to stop this process is if you agree to the terms I outlined in my previous recording. Full restitution, complete withdrawal from any claims against the ranch, and cooperation with federal oversight of your business restructuring." The recording ended with Sarah's determined gaze fixed on the camera. Leonard sat in stunned silence for several minutes before speaking. "She's destroyed me," he whispered. "My career, my reputation, my son's futures, all to protect a ranch she bought in secret." "No, Leonard," I said firmly. "You destroyed yourself. Sarah just documented what you'd already done." "Vincent, you have to understand the pressure I've been under. The financial markets have been brutal. Client expectations unrealistic. I was trying to keep everyone's investments profitable by stealing from other clients. By embezzling from our parents' estate." Leonard stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the dark pastures. "You've always been so self-righteous, Vincent, so satisfied with your steady paycheck and modest lifestyle. You never understood what it takes to build real wealth." "Real wealth? You mean criminal wealth?" "I mean the kind of money that sets families up for generations. The kind of opportunities your precious Sarah denied you by keeping you focused on safe, practical choices." The attack on Sarah ignited something dangerous in my chest. "Don't you dare blame your crimes on my wife. She kept you small, Vincent, content with middle-class mediocrity while I was building something significant." Noah stood up slowly, his weathered face hard with anger. "Mr. Leonard, I think you should stop talking now, and why should I listen to a hired hand? Because that hired hand is recording this conversation," Noah said quietly, holding up his phone. "Every admission you've just made." Leonard went pale. "You can't record me without permission." "This is a one-party consent state," I said. "I gave permission, and you're on my property making threats and confessing to federal crimes. The trap was complete." Leonard had been so focused on trying to manipulate me emotionally that he'd forgotten basic caution about incriminating himself. "You bastard set me up." "No, Leonard. Sarah set you up. We're just following her instructions." Leonard slumped back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. "What do you want? I already told you. Full restitution of the stolen estate money plus interest, complete withdrawal from any claims against the ranch, and cooperation with federal oversight if you want to avoid criminal prosecution. And if I refuse?" Then Sarah's evidence goes to the authorities tomorrow morning, along with the recording of tonight's conversation where you confess to embezzlement and fraud. Leonard buried his face in his hands. My sons don't know the extent of the problems. Adrian thinks we're just having a cash flow issue. Simon believes the client losses were due to market volatility. Then you need to tell them the truth tonight. It will destroy them. Adrian's law career, Simon's reputation in finance. They'll never recover from the scandal. I felt a flicker of sympathy for my nephews, but Sarah had been clear about the stakes. They can distance themselves from your activities if they act quickly, but only if they know what they're dealing with. You're asking me to destroy my own family. I'm asking you to take responsibility for what you've already done. Your family is already destroyed, Leonard. The only question is whether they'll have a chance to save themselves. Noah checked his watch. It's almost midnight. You should call your sons now before word gets out through other channels. Leonard pulled out his phone with trembling hands. Adrian, yes, I know it's late. I need you and Simon to come to the ranch immediately. Yes, tonight. There's something I need to tell you both. He ended the call and looked at me with hollow eyes. They'll be here in 2 hours. Good. That gives us time to review the restitution terms. Vincent, I don't have $200,000 in liquid assets. My personal finances are tied up in the firm's operations. Then you'll need to liquidate some assets. Sell your house, cash out your retirement accounts, whatever it takes. That will trigger tax consequences, early withdrawal penalties. I'll be lucky to clear 60 cents on the dollar. Should have thought of that before you stole the money. Leonard was quiet for several minutes, staring at his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. I never meant for it to go this far. It started as a temporary cash flow solution. Borrow from one account to cover losses in another. Pay it back when the next investments came through, but the investments kept failing. The market turned against every strategy I tried. Clients wanted guaranteed returns in an environment where nothing was guaranteed. I had to choose between admitting failure and losing everything, or finding creative ways to meet expectations. Creative ways meaning fraud. I told myself it was temporary financial management, that once conditions improved, I'd be able to make everyone whole again. It was the classic rationalization of every white-collar criminal I'd ever read about. They never saw themselves as thieves, just as creative problem solvers dealing with temporary setbacks. How long has this been going on? 3 years. Since right after Mom and Dad died, when I was dealing with the estate and trying to keep the firm operational simultaneously. So you used our parents' money as seed capital for your Ponzi scheme. Leonard winced at the terminology. I used available family resources to stabilize the business during a difficult transition period. Call it whatever makes you sleep at night, Leonard. It's still theft. Headlights appeared on the ranch road, followed by the sound of 2 vehicles approaching the house. Adrian and Simon had made good time from Denver. Vincent, Leonard said desperately, my sons are good men. Whatever you think of me, please don't let this destroy their futures. That's up to them. If they distance themselves from your criminal activity and cooperate with authorities, they might avoid prosecution. But if they try to cover for you or obstruct justice, they'll go down with you. The vehicle stopped outside and car doors slammed in the darkness. Remember, I said, as Leonard stood to greet his sons, everything you say in this room is being recorded. Choose your words carefully. Adrian knocked on the door, his voice tense with concern. Dad, what's going on? You sounded terrified on the phone. Leonard looked at me one last time, seeking some mercy or escape that I wasn't prepared to offer. Come in, boys, he called out. We need to have a family meeting. Adrian and Simon entered, both still wearing business attire despite the late hour. They looked around the ranch's great room with curiosity and growing alarm. Dad, what's this about? Simon asked. Why did we have to drive out here in the middle of the night? Leonard took a deep breath, realizing there was no way out except through the truth. Boys, I need to tell you something about the firm. Something I should have told you months ago. Leonard looked at his sons with the expression of a man facing his own execution. The firm is in serious financial trouble, more serious than I've let on. Adrian frowned, settling into a chair across from his father. We knew there were some cash flow issues, but you said they were temporary. They're not temporary. Leonard's voice cracked. They're criminal. Simon straightened in his chair. What do you mean criminal? I mean, I've been using client funds inappropriately to cover operational losses. What started as short-term borrowing became a pattern of financial mismanagement. Dad, Adrian said carefully, his lawyer's instincts kicking in. You need to be very specific about what you're saying. Financial mismanagement could mean a lot of things. Leonard glanced at me, then at Noah with his recording phone, realizing he had no choice but to confess everything. I've been moving money between client accounts to hide losses, using new investor deposits to pay returns to existing clients. And I used money from your grandfather and grandmother's estate to cover some of the firm's debts. The room went silent except for the sound of Adrian's sharp intake of breath. You used Grandpa and Grandma's estate money? Simon's voice was barely a whisper. It was supposed to be temporary. A bridge loan until my investments recovered. Adrian stood up abruptly, his face pale. Dad, what you're describing is securities fraud. Multiple felonies, federal charges that carry decades in prison. I know what it is, Leonard snapped, his composure finally cracking completely. You think I don't know what I've done? You think I haven't been lying awake every night for 3 years wondering when it would all collapse? Simon turned to me with desperate eyes. Uncle Vincent, how long have you known about this? I found out tonight. Your Aunt Sarah investigated your father's business practices before she died. She documented everything. Aunt Sarah knew. Adrian's legal training was taking over, his mind already calculating the implications. What kind of documentation? Noah handed Adrian a copy of one of Sarah's evidence folders, bank records, client statements, regulatory correspondence, everything needed for a federal prosecution. Adrian flipped through the pages, his expression growing more horrified with each document. Dad, this isn't financial mismanagement. This is organized criminal activity. Don't lecture me about criminal activity, Leonard shouted. You think your precious law firm hasn't cut corners? You think Simon's finance company doesn't push ethical boundaries? Everyone in this business operates in gray areas. Gray areas aren't federal felonies, Simon said quietly. Dad, you could go to prison for the rest of your life, and you could go with me. Leonard's desperation had transformed into vicious lashing out. You're both officers of the firm, both signatures on client agreements. Both potentially liable as co-conspirators. Adrian went white. We had no knowledge of any illegal activities. Try proving that to a federal prosecutor looking to make headlines. They'll paint you as knowing participants in a multi-year fraud scheme. I watched my nephews process the devastating reality. Through Leonard's criminal activity, he'd potentially destroyed not just his own career, but theirs as well. There might be a way out, I said quietly. All three men turned to me with desperate attention. Sarah anticipated this scenario. She prepared a cooperation agreement that could protect Adrian and Simon if they're willing to testify against Leonard's activities, testify against our own father. Simon looked sick. Testify truthfully about what you did and didn't know, I corrected. Sarah's documentation shows that most of the illegal transactions were handled personally by Leonard, without your direct involvement. Adrian was studying the cooperation agreement with professional focus. This could work. If we can demonstrate that we had no knowledge of the fraudulent activities and agree to full cooperation with federal investigators. But it requires complete honesty, Noah added. Any attempt to protect your father or minimize his activities would void the agreement and subject you to prosecution. Leonard stared at his sons with betrayed eyes. You're actually considering turning against me? Dad, you turned against the family when you started stealing. Adrian replied with painful honesty. Uncle Vincent didn't create the situation, you did. Simon was reading through Sarah's evidence files with growing alarm. Dad, according to these records, you've stolen over $500,000 from clients. That's not counting the estate money. The estate money was family business, not client theft. It was $200,000 that didn't belong to you, I said firmly. Money that should have come to me. Leonard turned on me with sudden fury. Money you never would have known existed if Sarah hadn't gone behind your back to investigate family finances. She was spying on us, Vincent. Collecting evidence like some kind of federal agent, she was protecting our family from a criminal. She was destroying our family. Before her interference, we could have handled this internally, worked out payment plans, restructured the business operations, found solutions that didn't involve federal prosecutors. Adrian slammed the cooperation agreement down on the coffee table. Dad, stop. Just stop. There are no internal solutions for federal crimes. There are no payment plans for securities fraud. You committed serious felonies, and now we have to deal with the consequences. And the consequences are that you're willing to sacrifice your father to save yourselves. The consequences are that we're willing to tell the truth to save what's left of our lives, Simon said with quiet dignity. Dad, if we lie for you now, we'll all go to prison. If we tell the truth, maybe only you will. Leonard looked around the room at the three men who had trapped him completely. His criminal activity had been exposed, documented, and recorded. His own sons were preparing to testify against him. His brother held evidence that could put him in federal prison for decades. What do you want from me? He asked finally. I pulled out the restitution agreement Sarah had prepared. Full confession. Complete cooperation with federal oversight. An immediate restitution of the $200,000 you stole from our parents' estate. And if I sign this, Sarah's evidence doesn't go to the FBI tomorrow morning. You get time to liquidate assets and make partial restitution before formal charges are filed. Leonard stared at the document for several minutes before reaching for a pen. I want it on record that I'm signing this under duress. The duress of facing the consequences of your own criminal actions, I replied. As Leonard signed the agreement with shaking hands, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but at the cost of destroying what remained of our family relationships. Sarah had known this moment would be painful but necessary. It's done, Leonard said, sliding the signed document across the table. I hope you're satisfied, Vincent. I'm not satisfied, I'm relieved. There's a difference. Adrian was already on his phone, calling his law firm's senior partner. Mr. Harrison, I need an emergency meeting first thing tomorrow morning. We have a situation that requires immediate damage control. Simon was doing calculations on his tablet. Dad, if we liquidate your personal assets immediately, we might be able to raise $150,000 in cash within 30 days. The remaining $50,000 would have to come from structured payments. Structured payments from what income? Leonard asked bitterly. My career is over. The firm will be shut down within weeks once word gets out. Then you'll get a job, I said simply. A regular job with a regular paycheck, like the rest of us. The concept seemed foreign to Leonard, who'd spent decades believing that his financial manipulations made him superior to people with honest employment. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Dad, Uncle Leonard called. Says the family meeting has been moved to 6 a.m. at the ranch. Something about time-sensitive issues that can't wait. Should I drive out tonight? I showed the text to Leonard. You called Daniel. He needs to understand what's happening. This affects his inheritance too. How does your criminal activity affect Daniel's inheritance? The ranch represents family wealth that should be preserved for the next generation. If you're determined to pursue legal action against me, at least consider Daniel's financial future. It was Leonard's final manipulation attempt, using my love for my son to extract one last concession. But I'd learned to recognize his tactics now. Daniel's financial future depends on him making honest choices and working hard for what he earns, just like his mother and I did. And just like his grandfather and grandmother did, Adrian added pointedly. Before you stole from their estate, Leonard shot his son a wounded look. I'm still your father, Adrian. You're also a criminal who put our careers at risk with your illegal activities. Love doesn't change facts, Dad. The sound of another vehicle on the ranch road interrupted our conversation. Through the window, I could see headlights approaching the house. That'll be Daniel, I said, early, but not surprising given Leonard's dramatic phone call. Daniel knocked on the door and entered, taking in the tense scene with obvious confusion. At 29, he had his mother's analytical mind and my practical nature, but he'd never been exposed to family criminal drama before. Dad, what's going on? Uncle Leonard sounded like someone had died. Sit down, son. There are some things you need to know about your uncle's business activities. As I explained the situation to Daniel, watching his expression change from confusion to disbelief to anger, I realized this was exactly the conversation Sarah had anticipated. She'd known that Leonard's crimes would eventually force a family reckoning. You stole from Grandpa and Grandma's estate. Daniel's voice was tight with controlled fury. While Mom was dying and Dad was taking care of her. It wasn't theft, Leonard protested weakly. It was a temporary reallocation of family resources. $200,000 that didn't belong to you, Daniel said with cutting precision. Money that should have helped my parents during Mom's medical treatments. Daniel, you need to understand the financial pressures I was facing. I understand that you're a thief who stole from his own family. The brutal honesty from his nephew seemed to finally break Leonard's remaining defenses. He slumped in his chair, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in a single night. Noah checked his watch. It's almost 3 a.m. We should probably wrap this up so everyone can get some rest before the formal family meeting. There isn't going to be a formal family meeting, I said. The issues have been resolved. Leonard has agreed to full restitution and withdrawal of any claims against the ranch. Daniel looked at the signed agreement. What about his criminal liability, the securities fraud and client theft? That will be handled through federal authorities with full cooperation from Leonard, Adrian, and Simon. And if he doesn't cooperate, I handed Daniel copies of Sarah's evidence files. Your mother documented everything. The case is airtight, regardless of Leonard's cooperation. Daniel spent several minutes reviewing the financial records, his expression growing grimmer with each page. Mom was investigating Uncle Leonard while she was fighting cancer. She was protecting our family's future while she still could. She knew she was dying and spent her time building a case against a criminal relative. Daniel's voice carried a mixture of pride and sadness. That's exactly the kind of thing Mom would do. Leonard stood up abruptly. I can't listen to any more of this, Vincent. You've gotten what you wanted. My confession, my agreement to restitution, my promise to cooperate with authorities. Can we please end this humiliation? The humiliation ends when you make full restitution. I replied. Until then, every dollar you still owe represents continuing theft from our family. Adrian was reviewing the cooperation timeline on his tablet. Dad, we need to contact federal prosecutors within 48 hours to arrange voluntary surrender. If we wait longer, they might issue arrest warrants instead. Arrest warrants? Daniel looked shocked. This is really that serious. Securities fraud and embezzlement are federal felonies, Simon explained. Dad could face 10 to 20 years in prison if convicted on all charges, but the cooperation agreement could reduce that significantly, Adrian added, assuming he follows through on his commitments. Leonard looked around the room at his family members, all of whom were now treating him like the criminal he'd become. I suppose there's no point in asking for family loyalty or support during this process. You forfeited family loyalty when you chose to steal from family members, I said simply. But if you make full restitution and cooperate honestly with authorities, we won't actively work against you. How generous. It's more generous than you deserve, Daniel said with cold finality. Leonard gathered his documents and headed for the door. Come on, boys. Let's go back to Denver and start planning for the end of our lives as we knew them. Adrian paused at the door, turning back to face me. Uncle Vincent, I want you to know that Simon and I had no knowledge of Dad's illegal activities. We genuinely believed the firm was just having cash flow problems. I know that, Adrian. Your Aunt Sarah's investigation made it clear that Leonard handled most of the fraudulent transactions personally. We'll testify to that if necessary. We won't let loyalty to our father destroy our own integrity. After they left, Daniel and I sat in the quiet ranch house, both of us emotionally drained from the night's revelations. Dad, I owe you an apology. When Uncle Leonard first called me about the ranch, I thought you might be making emotional decisions because of grief. Leonard is very persuasive when he wants to be. He's had years of practice manipulating people. How did Mom figure out what he was doing? I pulled out Sarah's laptop and opened another video file I hadn't seen yet. Let's find out. Sarah appeared on screen, this time seated in what looked like a private investigator's office. Vincent, if you're watching this with Daniel, then the immediate crisis has passed, and it's time to explain how I uncovered Leonard's criminal activity. Daniel leaned forward, eager to understand his mother's detective work. It started accidentally, Sarah continued. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I wanted to understand our family's complete financial picture. I knew Leonard had handled your parents' estate, so I asked him for copies of the final accounting. She held up a folder. What Leonard gave me didn't match the probate court records I obtained independently. The estate was valued at $400,000 in court documents, but Leonard's accounting showed only $200,000 in final distributions. So she knew immediately that money was missing, Daniel said. That's when I hired a private investigator to look into Leonard's business practices more thoroughly. What we found was a pattern of client losses, regulatory complaints, and financial irregularities going back 3 years. Sarah's expression grew determined. I realized that Leonard would eventually target any significant assets our family acquired. The ranch purchase was a test to see if he would respect my legal ownership or try to claim family rights to something he had no stake in. She was setting a trap, I said with admiration for my wife's strategic thinking. The ranch served multiple purposes. Sarah continued on screen. It gave you a place to finally implement your engineering innovations. It provided financial security through the mineral rights, and it created a situation where Leonard would expose his true nature by trying to steal something that clearly didn't belong to him. Daniel shook his head in amazement. Mom was playing chess, while Uncle Leonard was playing checkers. Your mother was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The video continued with Sarah outlining the legal protections she'd built into the ranch ownership structure, the cooperation agreements she'd prepared for Adrian and Simon, and the federal prosecution strategy that would minimize family collateral damage while ensuring Leonard faced appropriate consequences. Vincent, I know this has been painful, Sarah concluded. Discovering Leonard's betrayal while grieving my death was more than anyone should have to handle. But it was necessary to protect Daniel's future and preserve the legacy I wanted to leave for both of you. The video ended with Sarah's gentle smile, the expression I remembered from 1,000 quiet moments during our marriage. She loved us enough to handle this nightmare herself, Daniel said quietly. Even while she was fighting cancer, your mother was the strongest person I've ever known. We spent the rest of the early morning hours going through Sarah's files, understanding the full scope of her planning. She'd anticipated every possible scenario, prepared legal responses to each of Leonard's likely tactics, and even arranged for ongoing support if the criminal prosecution became complicated. Around 6 a.m., as sunrise painted the Colorado mountains gold and pink, Noah arrived to check on us. How did it go? He asked, noting our exhausted faces. Leonard signed the restitution agreement and admitted to everything, I said. His sons are cooperating with federal authorities. Mrs. Sarah would be proud. She always said the truth would win if people had the courage to pursue it. Daniel stood up, stretching muscles cramped from hours of sitting. Noah, can you show me around the ranch? I want to see what Mom built here. As they toured the property, I remained in the great room, surrounded by Sarah's careful planning and documentation. The woman I'd thought I knew completely had been operating on levels I'd never imagined, protecting our family from threats I'd never recognized. My phone rang. Thompson, Sarah's attorney, calling from Milwaukee. Vincent, I've been monitoring the situation as requested. Leonard's attorney contacted me an hour ago to confirm that the restitution agreement has been signed and that Leonard will be making the first payment within 30 days. Good. What about the federal prosecution? Adrian and Simon's attorney has already contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office to arrange voluntary cooperation. Leonard will surrender himself for questioning within 48 hours, and the ranch ownership completely secure. Leonard's signature on the restitution agreement includes formal withdrawal of any claims against the property. The mineral rights sale can proceed whenever you're ready. After ending the call, I walked out to the ranch's main workshop where Sarah had planned to demonstrate innovative construction techniques. The space was equipped with professional tools and designed to accommodate the engineering projects I'd dreamed about for decades, but never had the resources to attempt. Daniel found me there an hour later, his face bright with excitement from exploring the property. Dad, this place is incredible. The horse facilities, the workshop spaces, the guest houses Mom designed for visiting engineers. She really did build this as a working ranch and an educational center. She wanted to give me the chance to finally implement some of the innovations I'd only theorized about. Are you going to do it? Build the sustainable engineering center Mom envisioned. I looked around the workshop, imagining it filled with students and professionals testing new building techniques, advancing the field I'd loved my entire career. I think I am. It's what she wanted, and it's what I've always wanted too. Need any help? I could take a leave of absence from the law firm, come out here and help you get started. The offer surprised and moved me. What about your career in Minneapolis? Dad, careers are just jobs. This is about honoring Mom's legacy and helping you build something meaningful. Besides, he grinned, someone needs to make sure you don't get too absorbed in engineering and forget to eat. The idea of Daniel working with me on Sarah's engineering center filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt since before she died. My son wanted to help build something meaningful, something that would honor his mother's memory while advancing the field I'd devoted my career to. Are you sure about taking leave from the firm? I asked. That's a big career risk for someone your age. Dad, I've been practicing corporate law for 3 years. It pays well, but it's not exactly fulfilling. This project would let me use my legal skills for something that actually matters. Over the next few days, as we worked together to understand the full scope of Sarah's plans, I began to see the depth of her vision. The ranch wasn't just a property with valuable mineral rights, it was designed as a comprehensive center for advancing sustainable construction techniques. She'd already established relationships with 3 universities interested in using the facility for student projects. Engineering firms from across the country had expressed interest in testing innovative building methods on the ranch's demonstration areas. Even government agencies had inquired about partnership opportunities for developing more efficient construction standards. Mom had preliminary agreements with Colorado State, University of Denver, and Colorado School of Mines, Daniel said, reviewing Sarah's correspondence files. They want to bring student groups here for hands-on projects starting this fall. What kind of projects? Sustainable building competitions, alternative energy demonstrations, water conservation systems, the kind of real-world applications that engineering students rarely get to attempt. I walked through the ranch's workshop spaces, imagining them filled with young engineers testing the innovations I'd only read about in technical journals. The prospect of finally implementing decades of theoretical knowledge was both thrilling and terrifying. My phone rang. Adrian's name appeared on the caller ID. Uncle Vincent, I wanted to update you on Dad's situation. How is he? Cooperating fully with federal investigators. He surrendered himself yesterday morning and has been providing detailed information about all his fraudulent activities and the restitution. He's liquidating personal assets to raise the money, should have the first $100,000 within 2 weeks, the remainder within 60 days. What about his legal exposure? Adrian was quiet for a moment. The prosecutors are recommending a plea agreement, 3 to 5 years in federal prison depending on the amount of cooperation and restitution he provides. 3 to 5 years seemed like appropriate justice for Leonard's crimes, though I felt no satisfaction knowing my brother would likely spend his early 60s in prison. How are you and Simon handling this? We're cooperating fully with investigators and distancing ourselves professionally from Dad's activities. Simon is starting his own finance consulting practice, and I'm joining a different law firm that specializes in white-collar criminal defense. Ironic career choice. Maybe, but someone needs to help people navigate the consequences of financial crimes. I figure I have some relevant experience now. After ending the call, I found Daniel and Noah examining architectural plans for the guest houses Sarah had designed. "These are impressive," Noah said. She planned for 20 visiting engineers at a time, with workspace, accommodation, and demonstration areas all integrated into the ranch layout. How much would it cost to build everything she designed? Daniel consulted the budget projections, about $2 million for the complete facility. But we could phase the construction, starting with the most essential buildings and adding others as the program grows. And funding? The mineral rights sale should provide $4 million. After taxes and Leonard's restitution, we'd have roughly $2.80 million available for construction and operations. The numbers worked. Sarah had calculated everything precisely, ensuring that the ranch could become self-sustaining through program fees, university partnerships, and corporate consulting contracts. Over the following weeks, as Leonard's criminal case proceeded through federal courts and restitution payments began arriving, Daniel and I threw ourselves into developing Sarah's engineering center. We hired architects to refine her building designs, contracted with university partners to establish curriculum standards, and began recruiting the first class of visiting engineers. The work was exhausting, but fulfilling in ways I hadn't experienced since my early career. Every day brought new challenges that required creative problem-solving, innovative thinking, and collaboration with some of the brightest minds in engineering. "Dad, you're happier than I've seen you in years," Daniel observed one evening as we reviewed construction schedules in the ranch office. He was right. Despite the grief of losing Sarah and the trauma of Leonard's betrayal, I was engaged with life in ways I'd forgotten were possible. The engineering center project had given me purpose beyond merely surviving each day. "Your mother knew exactly what she was doing," I said. "She didn't just leave me property and money. She left me a mission. Think she knew how this would all turn out." Leonard's crimes, the family confrontation, us working together on her project. I considered the question, remembering Sarah's strategic mind and careful planning. "I think she anticipated most of it. Your mother was always better at seeing the big picture than I was. She was pretty amazing." Yes, she was. 6 months after that first night at the ranch, the Pierce Center for Sustainable Engineering held its official opening ceremony. Representatives from universities, government agencies, and engineering firms gathered to tour the completed facilities and observe student demonstrations. Leonard was serving his federal sentence by then, having pled guilty to securities fraud and embezzlement charges. Adrian and Simon had successfully separated themselves from his criminal activities and were building new careers. The family wounds were healing slowly, but the trust Leonard had broken would never fully recover. As I watched young engineers testing innovative construction techniques in the workshops Sarah had designed, I felt her presence in every detail. The careful planning, the attention to practical needs, the vision of creating something meaningful for future generations. It was all unmistakably Sarah's work. Daniel approached me during the ceremony, a satisfied smile on his face. "Mom would love this, wouldn't she?" "She did love it. That's why it exists." "Any regrets about leaving your quiet retirement in Wisconsin?" I looked around at the bustling center, filled with eager students and experienced professionals collaborating on projects that could change how we build for the future. "None whatsoever. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." The first year of operating the Pierce Center exceeded every expectation Sarah had outlined in her planning documents. University partnerships brought a steady stream of eager engineering students. Corporate consulting contracts provided sustainable revenue, and the innovative projects being developed on the ranch were already attracting national attention in technical journals. I found myself genuinely excited to wake up each morning, knowing that the day would bring new challenges and opportunities to implement ideas I'd carried for decades but never had the resources to test. The contrast with my quiet retirement in Wisconsin couldn't have been more dramatic. Daniel had settled into his role as the center's legal coordinator and business manager with natural skill. His law degree proved invaluable for navigating contracts with universities and corporations, while his practical nature helped keep ambitious engineering projects grounded in financial reality. "Dad, we have a problem," Daniel said one morning as I reviewed plans for a new sustainable housing demonstration project. "A good problem, but still a problem." "What kind of problem?" "We're booked solid for the next 18 months. Universities want to send student groups, companies want to test new building techniques, and government agencies are asking about partnership opportunities. We need to expand." I looked at the reservation calendar he showed me, filled with scheduled projects and visiting engineer programs. Sarah had designed the center to accommodate 20 people at a time, but demand was running 3 times that capacity. "What are you suggesting?" "Phase 2 construction. The guest house expansion Mom planned, additional workshop spaces, maybe even a small conference center for hosting engineering symposiums. The idea excited me, but it also represented a significant financial commitment. How much are we talking about? Daniel consulted his budget projections, about $1.5 million for everything. We have $800,000 in reserve from the mineral rights payments, and the engineering center is generating enough revenue to support construction loans for the remainder. And if the demand doesn't sustain, then we scale back operations. But Dad, look at these inquiries. He handed me a folder of correspondence from potential partners. MIT wants to establish a permanent research station here. The Department of Energy is interested in funding alternative energy demonstrations. 3 major construction companies want to test new materials and techniques. I spent the afternoon walking through the existing facilities, imagining how they could be expanded to accommodate growing demand. Sarah's original vision had been ambitious, but perhaps not ambitious enough. That evening, I opened Sarah's laptop to watch the final video file I hadn't yet viewed. It was labeled for year 2. Sarah appeared on screen, but this time she was clearly weak from cancer treatments, her face gaunt and her voice softer than in earlier recordings. Hello, my love. If you're watching this, then the engineering center has been successful beyond our initial plans, and you're considering expansion. Even in her final months, she'd anticipated this scenario. Vincent, don't be afraid to think bigger than I planned. The center was designed as a foundation, not a limit. If there's demand for larger programs, more ambitious projects, or permanent research facilities, pursue them. She leaned forward with effort. I kept the initial plans modest because I wanted to ensure success, but you have the experience and vision to grow beyond my designs. Trust your instincts. The video continued with Sarah outlining expansion possibilities she'd considered but hadn't included in the original plans. A research library, advanced testing facilities, even residential programs for visiting engineers from other countries. Build something extraordinary, Vincent. Build something that will matter long after we're both gone. The video ended with Sarah's gentle smile, the same expression I remembered from our final conversations before she died. I sat in the quiet ranch house, processing her encouragement to think beyond the boundaries she'd set. Sarah had given me not just a specific project, but permission to dream as big as my imagination allowed. My phone rang. Adrian's name appeared on the caller ID, which surprised me. Since Leonard's imprisonment, his sons had maintained polite but distant contact with me. Uncle Vincent, I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. How are you doing? Well, actually, the new law firm is working out better than I expected, and Simon's consulting practice is growing steadily. I'm glad to hear that. Actually, I'm calling because Simon and I have been following news about the engineering center. We've seen articles about your programs in professional journals. I wasn't sure where this conversation was heading. The center has been successful. Yes, Uncle Vincent, we were wondering if we could visit sometime. Not for any family reconciliation drama, just to see what Mom Sarah built and what you've accomplished with it. The request surprised me. You're welcome anytime. Though I should warn you, we're usually pretty busy with visiting engineers and student groups. That's what we'd like to see. We want to understand what she was building, what Dad tried to destroy. Adrian's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity rather than obligation or guilt. How is your father? I asked carefully. Adjusting to prison life as well as can be expected. He's participating in financial literacy programs and working in the prison library. I think the structured environment is actually helping him, and your relationship with him, complicated. We visit occasionally, but trust will take years to rebuild if it ever does. Dad's crimes didn't just hurt you and Daniel, they damaged our ability to believe anything he says. I understood that pain. Leonard's betrayal had shattered family bonds that might never fully heal. Adrian, you and Simon are welcome here whenever you want to visit. This center is about building things, not dwelling on past destruction. Thank you. I think we'd like that. After ending the call, I realized that Sarah's engineering center was becoming more than a technical facility. It was becoming a place where our damaged family could slowly begin to heal, where Leonard's sons could see what honest work and genuine vision could accomplish. The ranch that Sarah had forbidden me to visit during her lifetime had become a sanctuary where broken relationships could be rebuilt, where innovative ideas could flourish, and where the future could be shaped by hope rather than fear. 2 years after the center's opening, Adrian and Simon made their first visit to the ranch. I watched their rental car navigate the winding gravel road, remembering the last time they'd driven up that same driveway with their father to claim something that didn't belong to them. This time was different. They came not as adversaries, but as family members seeking to understand what their aunt had built and what their father had tried to destroy. Daniel greeted them at the main house with genuine warmth. Despite everything that had happened, he'd maintained relationships with his cousins, understanding that Leonard's crimes didn't define his son's character. Welcome to the Pierce Center, Daniel said as they climbed out of their car, ready for the full tour. Adrian looked around at the expanded facilities with obvious amazement. The ranch now included additional workshop buildings, expanded guest quarters, and a small conference center where engineering symposiums were held monthly. "This is incredible," Simon said, studying the sustainable building demonstrations scattered across the property. "I had no idea it had grown so large." "Dad's been busy," Daniel replied with pride. "We're hosting 60 engineers this month from universities across the country." I joined them on the front porch, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. These were Leonard's sons, but they were also my nephews, part of the family Sarah had been trying to protect with her careful planning. "Uncle Vincent," Adrian said formally, extending his hand. "Thank you for letting us visit. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy for any of us." As we toured the facilities, I watched Adrian and Simon's faces carefully. They seemed genuinely interested in understanding the center's mission rather than looking for financial angles or family grievances. "This workshop is where we test innovative foundation techniques," I explained as we entered one of the newer buildings. "Last month, a team from Colorado State developed a new earthquake-resistant design that could revolutionize construction in seismic zones." Simon examined the technical drawings posted on the workshop walls. "Aunt Sarah planned all this. She planned the foundation. We've expanded based on demand, but everything traces back to her original vision." "What was her vision exactly?" Adrian asked. I paused, considering how to explain Sarah's complex motivations to Leonard's sons. She wanted to create a place where engineering innovation could happen without corporate constraints or academic limitations. A place where the best ideas could be tested and improved regardless of their commercial viability. And she funded it by buying mineral rights that Dad tried to steal, Simon said with painful honesty. "She funded it by saving money for 20 years and making strategic investments. Your father's attempt to claim the mineral rights was just the catalyst that forced everything into the open." We continued the tour through the expanded guest quarters, the research library Sarah had envisioned, and the conference center where visiting engineers presented their findings to peers and industry professionals. "How many people work here now?" Adrian asked. 15 full-time staff, plus Noah, who manages the ranch operations. During busy periods, we host up to 80 visiting engineers and students, and it's financially sustainable. Daniel answered that question. More than sustainable. We're profitable enough to fund expansion and contribute to engineering scholarship programs at partner universities. As the afternoon progressed, I noticed both Adrian and Simon relaxing, their formal politeness giving way to genuine curiosity about the center's work. "Can I ask you something?" Simon said as we sat on the ranch house porch watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains. "Sure. Do you think Dad could have been part of something like this if he'd made different choices?" The question surprised me with its complexity. Leonard had intelligence and business skills that could have contributed to legitimate enterprises if he'd chosen honest paths. "Your father has abilities that could benefit projects like this," I said carefully, "but it would require fundamentally changing his approach to business and relationships." "He writes letters from prison sometimes," Adrian said quietly, apologizing, trying to explain his thinking during those years. "I'm not sure he really understands what he did wrong." "What do you mean?" "He focuses on the financial pressures, the impossible client demands, the market conditions that made his job difficult. He doesn't seem to grasp that stealing was a choice, not an inevitable result of business challenges." I understood their frustration. Leonard's letters probably contained the same justifications and rationalizations he'd used during our confrontation at the ranch. "Your father may never fully accept responsibility for his actions," I said, "but that doesn't define who you are or what you can accomplish." "That's what we're trying to figure out," Simon replied. "How to build careers and relationships that honor what Aunt Sarah created rather than what Dad destroyed. You're already doing it. Adrian, your work defending people accused of white-collar crimes helps ensure fair treatment under the law. Simon, your consulting practice helps small businesses avoid the financial mistakes your father made." As evening fell, we gathered in the ranch house for dinner, with several visiting engineers who were conducting research projects. The conversation flowed naturally between technical discussions of sustainable building methods and personal stories about career paths and life choices. I watched Adrian and Simon participate in these conversations with growing confidence, their intelligence and professional experience making valuable contributions to the group's discussions. After the visiting engineers retired to their quarters, the four of us, Daniel, Adrian, Simon, and I, remained in the great room, finally addressing the family dynamics that had brought us together. "I want to say something," Adrian began, his voice serious. "Simon and I have spent 2 years wondering if we could ever have a normal relationship with family again after what Dad did. And I asked, being here today, seeing what Aunt Sarah built and what you've accomplished, makes me think that family relationships don't have to be defined by the worst things any family member has done." Simon nodded agreement. "We can choose to build something positive rather than just react to Dad's negative choices." Daniel leaned forward. Does that mean you'd be interested in having ongoing relationships with us, if you'd be willing, Adrian said? Not as business partners or anything complicated like that, just as family members who want to support each other's honest work. I felt Sarah's presence in that moment, her strategic mind having anticipated even this reconciliation. She'd known that Leonard's sons would eventually need to choose between their father's destructive path and their own integrity. 3 years into the center's operation, I received news that Leonard was being released from federal prison early for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing financial fraud investigations. The notification came through official channels, but Adrian called me personally to discuss the implications. Uncle Vincent, I wanted you to hear this directly from family rather than through legal correspondence, he said during our phone call. How do you feel about your father's release? Complicated. He served his time and apparently participated constructively in prison programs. But trust doesn't rebuild automatically just because someone completes their sentence. Have you and Simon decided whether you'll maintain contact with him? We'll see him occasionally, probably help him transition back to civilian life. But we won't be resuming any business relationships or family financial discussions. I understood their caution. Leonard had proven himself capable of sophisticated deception and manipulation. Even his cooperation with federal authorities might have been calculated to reduce his sentence rather than genuine acceptance of responsibility. What are his plans after release? He's required to complete 500 hours of community service related to financial literacy education. After that, he'll probably look for employment with companies that hire people with criminal backgrounds. The idea of Leonard teaching financial literacy to others carried a certain irony. But perhaps confronting his own financial crimes every day would reinforce whatever lessons prison had taught him. 2 weeks later, Leonard appeared at the ranch unannounced. I was reviewing construction plans for a new advanced materials testing facility when Noah knocked on my office door. Mr. Vincent, your brother is here, alone. Says he'd like to speak with you if you're willing. I hadn't seen Leonard since that night 3 years earlier when he'd confessed to his crimes and signed the restitution agreement. The man who approached my office looked older, thinner, and more subdued than the confident businessman who'd once demanded half my ranch. Vincent, he said quietly, standing in the doorway, thank you for seeing me. Come in, sit down. Leonard took the chair across from my desk, his movements careful and deferential. Prison had clearly changed him, though I couldn't yet determine whether the changes ran deeper than surface behavior. I wanted to apologize, he began. Not for legal reasons or family pressure. Just because you deserve to hear it directly from me. I'm listening. I was wrong about everything. The embezzlement, the attempt to claim rights to Sarah's ranch, the manipulation of Daniel and my own sons. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. The words seemed genuine, but I'd learned to be cautious about Leonard's sincerity. What changed? Prison gives you time to think without the distractions of trying to maintain a false image of success. I spent 3 years analyzing every decision I made, every choice that led to criminal activity. And what did you conclude? Leonard was quiet for several moments, choosing his words carefully. I concluded that I was so focused on appearing successful that I forgot how to be successful. I measured my worth by how much money I could control rather than by what I could contribute. And now I'm a 57-year-old ex-convict trying to figure out how to rebuild a life based on honest work rather than financial manipulation. I studied my brother's face, looking for signs of the calculating opportunist who'd tried to steal Sarah's ranch. What I saw instead was a man who seemed genuinely humbled by the consequences of his choices. Have you seen Adrian and Simon since your release briefly? They're maintaining contact, but keeping appropriate distance. I don't blame them for being cautious. They've built good careers for themselves. I know. I'm proud of them for succeeding honestly after watching their father fail dishonestly. Leonard looked around my office, taking in the engineering diagrams and construction photos that covered the walls. May I ask what you've built here? I know I have no right to curiosity about your accomplishments, but the scope of this operation seems remarkable. I gave him a basic overview of the Pierce Center, its programs and partnerships, and the expansion plans funded by the mineral rights he'd once tried to steal. Sarah planned most of this before she died. She planned the foundation. We've expanded based on demand and opportunity, and it's financially successful? Very much so. Leonard nodded slowly. She was always smarter than any of us gave her credit for. I underestimated her completely. Sarah saw your criminal activity coming years before you made your move on the ranch. She documented everything and prepared countermeasures, including my son's cooperation agreements, including protection for family members who chose honesty over loyalty to criminal activity. Leonard absorbed this information without defensiveness or rationalization. Vincent, I don't expect forgiveness or family reconciliation, but I want you to know that seeing what you've accomplished here makes me understand what I destroyed through my choices. What do you mean? This center represents building something meaningful that contributes to society. My investment firm represented taking money from people and gambling with their financial security. The contrast is pretty stark. I found myself feeling something I hadn't expected, sympathy for Leonard's recognition of what he'd lost through his criminal choices. What will you do now? Find honest work, complete my community service, try to earn back whatever small measure of respect Adrian and Simon might be willing to give me. Simple goals for someone starting over at my age. And financial restitution. You still owe $50,000 from our parents' estate. I know. My community service placement includes financial counseling for people with debt problems, ironic but appropriate. I'm hoping to complete the remaining restitution payments within 18 months. Leonard stood to leave, then paused at the door. Vincent, would it be possible for me to visit occasionally, not for family meals or social events, just to see what productive work looks like? The request surprised me. Why would you want to do that? Because I spent 30 years focused on taking value from other people's work. I'd like to understand what it looks like to create value instead. I considered the request carefully. Leonard had served his sentence, made partial restitution, and seemed genuinely changed by his experience. Sarah's ranch had become a place where damaged relationships could heal if people were willing to choose integrity over past grievances. You can visit, I said finally, but understand the conditions. This is a working facility focused on education and innovation. You're welcome to observe, but not to participate in business decisions or financial discussions. I understand. I'm not looking for involvement, just education about how legitimate enterprises operate. After Leonard left, I called Daniel to discuss the unexpected visit. Dad, are you sure that's wise? Uncle Leonard has a history of manipulation and opportunism. He also served 3 years in federal prison and seems genuinely changed by the experience. People can fake humility, especially when they want something. Daniel's caution was reasonable. Leonard had proven himself capable of sophisticated deception when it served his purposes. What do you think he wants? I'm not sure he knows yet, but I think seeing what honest work can accomplish might be good for him. And if he reverts to his old behaviors, then he'll be asked to leave and stay away. This ranch has been a place where people can rebuild their lives through honest effort. Maybe Leonard deserves that opportunity too. Over the following months, Leonard made occasional visits to the ranch, typically arriving during busy periods when multiple engineering projects were underway. He would observe quietly, asking thoughtful questions about construction techniques and program management without inserting himself into conversations. His presence made some visiting engineers uncomfortable initially, particularly those who'd heard about his criminal background. But Leonard's consistently respectful behavior and genuine interest in learning gradually overcame most skepticism. Your brother seems different, Noah observed after Leonard's third visit. Quieter, more attentive to what other people are saying. Prison changes people, sometimes for the better. Mrs. Sarah would probably approve of giving him a chance to prove himself. Sarah would indeed have approved. Her entire ranch project had been based on the belief that people could change, that honest effort could overcome past failures, and that forgiveness was possible when accompanied by genuine accountability. During his fourth visit, Leonard approached me with an unexpected request. Vincent, I've been thinking about my community service requirement. The financial literacy program I'm supposed to teach. What about it? I was wondering if some of those sessions could be held here at the ranch, not involving your programs directly, just using the conference facilities for weekend workshops. I considered the proposal carefully. What kind of workshops? Financial planning for people starting over after bankruptcy, divorce, or other major life changes, people who need to rebuild their financial lives from scratch. And you think you're qualified to teach financial planning? Leonard's expression grew serious. I'm uniquely qualified to teach what not to do. I made every possible financial mistake, committed every form of investment fraud, and destroyed my family's economic security through criminal activity. Who better to warn people about the consequences of poor financial choices? The logic was compelling, if unconventional. Leonard's criminal experience gave him insights into financial failure that traditional advisors might lack. You'd be teaching people to avoid the mistakes you made? Exactly. How to recognize Ponzi schemes, how to verify investment advisor credentials, how to spot the warning signs of financial manipulation. I'd be a cautionary tale with educational value. I discussed the proposal with Daniel, who was initially skeptical but gradually warmed to the concept. It's actually brilliant, Daniel said after reviewing Leonard's preliminary curriculum. He's not claiming to be a financial success story. He's positioning himself as a failure case study that people can learn from. And you think the ranch's reputation could handle hosting programs led by a convicted felon? If the programs help people avoid financial fraud and make better money decisions, yes. Besides, everyone involved would know exactly who Leonard is and what he's done. No deception, no false credentials. We agreed to a trial period with Leonard hosting monthly financial literacy workshops at the ranch. The sessions would be clearly labeled as educational programs for people recovering from financial setbacks taught by someone with personal experience in financial failure and recovery. The first workshop attracted 15 participants, people dealing with bankruptcy, divorce, job loss, and other economic challenges. Leonard opened the session with brutal honesty about his own criminal activity and its consequences. "I'm not here to teach you how to get rich," he began. "I'm here to teach you how to avoid the mistakes that made me poor, destroyed my family relationships, and sent me to federal prison." The participants responded positively to Leonard's straightforward approach. His willingness to detail his own failures without excuses or rationalization gave him credibility that traditional financial advisors often lacked. "Mr. Pierce, how do we know if our investment advisor is legitimate?" asked a woman whose retirement savings had been stolen by a fraudulent financial planner. "Ask to see their licensing credentials, verify them independently through regulatory websites, and never invest money you can't afford to lose in speculative ventures," Leonard replied. "I convince people to trust me with money by projecting confidence and success. Don't be impressed by expensive offices or luxury cars. They might be funded by previous clients' money." After the workshop, several participants approached Leonard privately to thank him for his honesty and practical advice. "That was actually helpful," Daniel observed as we cleaned up the conference room. "Uncle Leonard may have found something useful to do with his criminal experience. Your aunt would be pleased. She always believed that people's worst mistakes could become their greatest contributions if they were willing to be honest about them." As months passed, Leonard's financial literacy workshops grew in popularity and effectiveness. Word spread through social services networks and legal aid organizations that the Pierce Center hosted programs specifically designed for people recovering from financial disasters. Leonard's transformation from criminal to educator wasn't complete or dramatic, but it was genuine. He'd found a way to use his experience with financial failure to help others avoid similar mistakes. The man who'd once stolen from his own family was now teaching strangers how to protect themselves from financial predators. It wasn't redemption in any grand sense, but it was honest work that contributed value to society. For Leonard, at 57 years old with a criminal record, that represented significant progress. 5 years after discovering Sarah's secret ranch, I stood in the expanded conference center watching Leonard facilitate a financial recovery workshop for 30 participants. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd once tried to steal my inheritance was now teaching others how to protect theirs. "The warning signs of investment fraud are consistent across all scams," Leonard explained to the group. Guaranteed returns, pressure to invest immediately, reluctance to provide written documentation, and promises that seem too good to be true. A middle-aged man raised his hand. "But how do we distinguish between legitimate high-yield investments and fraudulent schemes?" "That's the wrong question," Leonard replied. "The right question is, can you afford to lose this money completely? If the answer is no, don't invest in anything promising unusually high returns." Daniel entered the conference room quietly, carrying financial reports for my review. At 34, he'd grown into his role as the center's business manager with confidence and skill that reminded me of his mother's strategic mind. "How's the workshop going?" he whispered. "Your uncle is becoming quite an effective educator. Hard to believe this is the same man who tried to steal the ranch 5 years ago. People can change if they're willing to accept the consequences of their past choices and commit to different future behavior." After the workshop ended, Leonard joined Daniel and me in my office to review the center's financial reports. His input on budget management and operational efficiency had become valuable, though we maintained clear boundaries about his advisory role versus decision-making authority. "Revenue is up 15% from last year," Daniel reported. "University partnerships are expanding, corporate consulting contracts are growing, and the workshop programs are breaking even. What about the expansion costs for the Advanced Materials Laboratory? On budget and on schedule for completion next month. We'll be able to host materials testing programs for aerospace and automotive companies starting this fall." Leonard reviewed the numbers with professional interest, but didn't offer unsolicited advice. Prison had taught him to listen more than he spoke, a significant change from his previous approach to business discussions. "Vincent," he said carefully, "may I ask about the scholarship program funding? The Pierce Center now provided engineering scholarships for students from low-income families, funded by profits from our consulting operations. What about it?" "The amount allocated this year, minus $200,000. That's exactly what I stole from our parents' estate." "Yes, it is." "Are you funding scholarships as a form of restitution?" I considered how to explain the symbolism without sounding preachy or manipulative. "I'm funding scholarships because that's what Sarah would have done with excess profits. The amount matches what you stole, but that's coincidence rather than calculation. It's poetic justice, Daniel observed. Money that was stolen from family now helps other families access educational opportunities. Leonard nodded slowly. Your parents would be proud of how you've used their legacy. They'd be ashamed of how I damaged it. Our parents would be proud that you're trying to make amends through honest work, I corrected. Shame serves no purpose once someone is committed to doing better. My phone rang with a call from Adrian, who now contacted me regularly to discuss legal issues related to the center's operations and his own career developments. Uncle Vincent, I have news that might interest the whole family. Simon and I are getting married. Both of you, to whom Adrian laughed. Separate marriages. I'm engaged to Rebecca, a prosecutor I met through work. Simon is marrying Amanda, a financial advisor who specializes in ethical investment strategies. That's wonderful news. When are the weddings? Simon's is in June, mine is in August. We were hoping you and Daniel could attend both ceremonies, of course. We'd be honored, and Uncle Vincent, we were wondering if Dad could attend too, not in any prominent role, just as family. I looked at Leonard, who was listening to my side of the conversation with obvious emotion. That's your decision to make, not mine. He's your father. We know, but we wanted to make sure it wouldn't make you uncomfortable. Your uncle deserves the chance to celebrate his son's happiness if you're willing to include him. After ending the call, Leonard sat quietly for several minutes before speaking. They're really willing to include me in their weddings. They're willing to include the man you've become, not the man you were when you committed crimes. I don't deserve their forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about deserving it, Daniel said gently. It's about choosing to build future relationships based on current behavior rather than past mistakes. Your mother understood that principle, I added. She forgave me for every time I chose security over ambition, practical concerns over dreams. That forgiveness allowed me to eventually pursue the engineering projects I'd always wanted to attempt. Leonard stood up and walked to the window overlooking the ranch's main workshop, where visiting engineers were testing innovative construction techniques. Vincent, I need to tell you something I've never said directly. What's that? Sarah's ranch project was brilliant. Not just the financial planning or the engineering center concept, but the way she structured everything to protect your family from people like me. What do you mean? She knew I'd try to claim rights to any significant assets you acquired. So she created something I couldn't steal, a working enterprise that requires honest effort to maintain. I could have taken money or property, but I couldn't take your expertise or reputation or the relationships you've built with universities and engineering firms. Leonard turned back to face us with a slight smile. She made the ranch theft-proof by making it dependent on qualities I didn't possess. Integrity, technical knowledge, and the ability to create value rather than just extract it. She also made it forgiveness possible by creating space for people to demonstrate change through their actions, I pointed out, including space for people like me to learn what productive work looks like, especially space for people like you. Sarah believed that everyone deserved the opportunity to contribute something positive regardless of their past failures. Leonard nodded, understanding finally what Sarah had built, not just an engineering center, but a place where damaged people could rebuild their lives through honest effort and mutual respect. The weddings that summer became celebrations not just of Adrian and Simon's new marriages, but of our family's reconstruction after years of damage and healing. Simon's June wedding to Amanda took place at a small resort near Denver, while Adrian's August ceremony with Rebecca was held at the ranch itself. For Adrian's wedding, we transformed the main conference center into an elegant reception hall, with engineering students and faculty helping to set up sustainable lighting and sound systems as a demonstration project. The combination of family celebration and educational opportunity perfectly embodied what the Pierce Center had become. Leonard attended both weddings quietly, clearly moved by his son's happiness, but careful not to claim more attention than was appropriate. His behavior throughout both events showed the humility and genuine change that years of consequences had taught him. Dad, Adrian said during the father-son dance at his reception, I want you to know that having you here means everything to me. I'm honored that you still consider me worthy of inclusion in the most important day of your life, Leonard replied, his voice thick with emotion. We all make mistakes, Dad. What matters is how we respond to them. Watching Leonard dance with his son while surrounded by family members and friends who knew his complete story, both his crimes and his efforts at redemption, I felt Sarah's presence strongly. She would have approved of this moment, this choice to build relationships based on current character rather than past failures. Daniel, now serving as best man for both weddings, had matured into a leader whose judgment I trusted completely. His decision to maintain relationships with his cousins despite their father's crimes had helped keep our family connected during its most difficult period. Dad, Daniel said during a quiet moment at Adrian's reception, I've been thinking about the future of the center. What kind of thinking? Expansion beyond what even Mom imagined. International partnerships, permanent research facilities, maybe even degree-granting programs. The scope of his vision exceeded anything Sarah or I had originally planned. That would require significant investment and institutional partnerships. I know, but we've built credibility and relationships that make it possible. MIT wants to establish a permanent research station here. The Department of Energy is interested in funding alternative technology development. 3 foreign universities have inquired about exchange programs. And you want to pursue all of this? I want to build something that will still be making a difference 50 years from now. Something that honors Mom's vision by exceeding it. As autumn arrived and the newlyweds settled into their marriages, I found myself reflecting on the dramatic changes 5 years had brought. The ranch that Sarah had forbidden me to visit had become the center of my new life. The brother who'd tried to steal my inheritance had become a valued contributor to community education. The son who'd initially doubted my judgment had become my partner in building something extraordinary. Most remarkably, Leonard completed his final restitution payment in September 18 months ahead of the scheduled timeline. His financial literacy workshops had grown into a consulting practice that helped people recovering from economic disasters rebuild their financial lives. Vincent, Leonard said when he delivered the final payment check, "This represents more than money. It represents the end of one chapter and the beginning of another." "What do you mean? For 5 years, I've been defined by the crimes I committed and the restitution I owed. Now I can define myself by the work I choose to do and the relationships I choose to build." "And what work do you choose?" "I want to expand the financial literacy programs. Not just weekend workshops, but comprehensive education for people transitioning out of bankruptcy, divorce, or job loss. There's real demand for services that help people rebuild financial stability honestly." "Sounds like you found your calling." "I found meaningful work that uses my experience productively. That's more than most 60-year-old ex-convicts can say." As winter settled over the Colorado mountains, I received a letter that brought Sarah's story full circle. The letter came from Sarah's former cancer treatment team at the University Medical Center, informing me that they were establishing the Sarah Pierce Memorial Fund for Cancer Patient Support Services. Mrs. Pierce's example of continuing to plan for her family's future while fighting terminal cancer has inspired our entire oncology program. The letter explained, "The fund will help other cancer patients complete important life projects and protect their family's financial security during treatment." The medical center wanted to hold the fund's inaugural event at the Pierce Center, combining fundraising with education about advanced treatment options and family planning during serious illness. "It's perfect," Daniel said when I shared the letter with him. "Mom would love knowing that her example is helping other families face cancer with better preparation and support, and it brings her story full circle." The ranch she bought in secret while fighting cancer becomes the place where other cancer patients learn how to protect their families. The Memorial Fund event took place in early December with cancer survivors, medical professionals, and engineering colleagues gathering to honor Sarah's legacy. Leonard participated by facilitating a workshop on financial planning during serious illness, sharing insights about protecting family assets when facing uncertain medical outcomes. Mrs. Pierce understood something that many people facing serious illness struggle to grasp. Leonard told the workshop participants, "Planning for your family's future after you're gone isn't giving up on recovery, it's ensuring that your love continues to protect them regardless of medical outcomes." After the event, as guests departed and the ranch grew quiet under a blanket of early snow, I walked through the facilities Sarah had envisioned and we'd built together across the years since her death. The main workshop buzzed with student projects even in winter. The conference center hosted planning meetings for next year's expanded programs. The guest quarters accommodated visiting engineers from universities worldwide. The ranch office displayed awards and recognition for innovative engineering education. Everything Sarah had hoped to build had become reality, and more. Her secret project had grown into something that would influence engineering education for generations, provide economic opportunity for our family, and offer redemption possibilities for people seeking second chances. The Forbidden Ranch had become a sanctuary where broken things could be repaired, where innovative ideas could flourish, and where love could transcend even death to protect what mattered most. 10 years after Sarah's death, I stood on the ranch's main porch watching the sunrise paint the Colorado mountains in shades of gold and purple. At 68, I'd found a rhythm of life I'd never imagined possible during those quiet retirement years in Wisconsin. The Pierce Center now hosted programs year-round, with a waiting list that extended 2 years into the future. Daniel, at 39, had become the center's executive director, managing operations with the same strategic brilliance his mother had shown in planning the original facility. "Dad, the delegation from Japan arrives this afternoon," Daniel said, joining me on the porch with coffee and the morning's correspondence. "They want to discuss establishing a sister facility near Tokyo, and the proposal from the European Union? Still under review, but they're very interested in funding sustainable building research here. The potential grant would be $5 million over 3 years." The scope of opportunities now exceeded anything Sarah could have envisioned. What she'd planned as a modest engineering center had evolved into an internationally recognized institution for advanced construction research and education. Any word from Leonard about his financial counseling certification? He passed the final exam last week. At 64, your brother is now a certified financial counselor specializing in crisis intervention and fraud prevention. Leonard's transformation from criminal to community educator continued to amaze everyone who knew his complete story. His practice now served clients throughout Colorado, helping people rebuild their financial lives after bankruptcy, divorce, or fraud victimization. And the Memorial Scholarship Fund, fully endowed. We can provide full engineering scholarships for 20 students annually in perpetuity. The Sarah Pierce Memorial Scholarship had become one of the most prestigious awards in sustainable engineering education, supporting students who demonstrated both technical excellence and commitment to using their skills for community benefit. Adrian approached the porch carrying his infant daughter Emma, now 6 months old and the center of everyone's attention whenever she visited the ranch. "Uncle Vincent, Rebecca and I have been discussing something we'd like to propose." "What's that?" "We want to establish a legal clinic here at the center. Pro bono services for inventors and small businesses developing sustainable technologies who can't afford patent attorneys." Adrian's proposal fit perfectly with the center's mission of supporting innovation and community development. "Where would you locate it?" "The old equipment barn could be converted into office space. We'd bring attorneys here quarterly to handle cases and provide legal education for entrepreneurs. And this would be in addition to your regular law practice. This would eventually become our regular practice. Rebecca and I want to focus on work that contributes to technological advancement rather than just corporate litigation." Simon arrived soon after with Amanda and their twin boys, 2-year-old Nicholas and Nathan, who immediately began exploring the ranch with the fearless enthusiasm of toddlers. "Uncle Vincent," Simon said while chasing his sons away from the workshop equipment, "Amanda has a proposal that ties into Adrian's legal clinic idea. Financial planning services for technology startups." "Exactly. Help inventors and entrepreneurs understand funding options, avoid predatory investors, and structure their businesses for long-term success rather than quick profit extraction." Amanda, now an established ethical investment advisor, had developed a reputation for helping clients build sustainable wealth through socially responsible strategies. So the ranch would become a comprehensive support center for sustainable technology development. Legal services, financial planning, engineering testing, educational programs, and research facilities all in one location, Daniel summarized. A complete ecosystem for innovation. The vision excited me, but it also represented a dramatic expansion of our mission and responsibility. "What does Leonard think of these plans, actually?" He suggested them. Adrian replied, "Dad's work with financial crisis victims has shown him how many people fail because they lack access to honest professional advice during critical business decisions." Leonard appeared around the corner of the main house, carrying a briefcase and wearing the modest business attire that had replaced his expensive suits from his criminal years. "Family meeting?" he asked with the careful politeness that still characterized his interactions with us. "Family planning session," I corrected. "We're discussing proposals to expand the center's mission, the legal and financial services additions. You've been thinking about this for a while, haven't you?" Leonard set down his briefcase and joined us on the porch, accepting coffee from Daniel with quiet gratitude. "I've been thinking about how to use everything this family has learned about engineering, about business, about recovering from failure, to help other people avoid the mistakes we've made and achieve the success we've found. And you think the ranch is the right place for that kind of comprehensive support. I think this ranch represents everything good that can happen when people choose integrity over profit, community benefit over individual advantage, and long-term value over short-term gain." Leonard looked around at the bustling facility, with engineering students setting up experiments in the workshops and visiting professors discussing research projects in the conference center. "Sarah built something that changes people's lives for the better. We should expand that mission as much as possible." As the morning progressed and family members scattered to their various responsibilities, Daniel reviewing program schedules, Adrian and Rebecca planning the legal clinic, Simon and Amanda developing financial services curricula, Leonard preparing for afternoon counseling sessions, I remained on the porch, reflecting on the journey that had brought us all to this moment. The ranch that Sarah had forbidden me to visit during her lifetime had become the foundation for everything meaningful in my life after her death. Her secret had been not just about property or money, but about possibility. The possibility that people could change, that families could heal, that innovation could flourish, and that love could transcend even death to protect what mattered most. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to build something extraordinary. The Pierce Center would continue growing, evolving, and adapting to serve needs we couldn't yet imagine. But today, surrounded by family members whose lives had been transformed by Sarah's vision and our collective commitment to making it reality, I felt complete satisfaction with the choices we'd made and excitement about the future we were continuing to build together. The Forbidden Ranch had become hallowed ground where broken things could be repaired, where innovative ideas could flourish, and where love could create legacies that endured across generations. Sarah's secret had become our family's greatest treasure, and her legacy would continue shaping lives long after all of us were gone. Sometimes the greatest secrets aren't hidden to deceive, but to protect, and the forbidden places in our lives often become the sanctuaries where we discover who we're truly meant to be. Love doesn't end with death. It transforms into legacy, creating possibilities for those left behind to become more than they ever imagined possible.